are tuning in for your first time, this is our Coach's Corner with Mike and Jonathan Kaplan. My name is Mike Anzano. I'm the associate head coach for COM swim team out in Midland, Texas. And this is Jonathan Kaplan. He's the head coach for Swim RVA in Richmond, Virginia. And we just try to get together and we just talk swimming. So there's not a structure to this, and we just kind of have a conversation a little bit. Um, something uh something I've been trying to do more lately is just talk to coaches. Um, it's almost like conversations are becoming a lost art, I
Yeah,
think. And like just talking to people and not waiting until you get to the pool deck or something like that, like just texting or calling a coach being like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because I think I don't know if this is a generational thing, but are we like guarded on our thoughts now, much more now, because of what people would say or think about like what we think about the sport? Just like keeping it to swimming. And I don't
interesting.
know
Yeah,
if it's more or less like that, but like the only way we get better as coaches and we move this sport forward, I think, is if we talk about these even half-baked thoughts. And I don't know about you, Jonathan, but like I have to talk. I talk it out. I have to. And
yeah,
my wife is used to me by now, but I just tell her, I'm going to say this out loud. Like I'll tell her something and I'll be like, this is just a thought. This means nothing. Like, and I'm talking about like moving or something crazy like that.
right.
Like, 'cause she'll look at me, be like, I'm not actually trying to move. I was like, I'm just
Yeah,
talking, just thinking.
these thoughts happen in your head, but right now they got to come out of my mouth for it to make sense, and we'll talk it through.
Exactly. So, okay, so I'm just going to ask you a question here because I've been thinking about this. If you were to switch teams, okay, and anybody listening to this, if you work for Jonathan or you work for me or you're his boss or my
Don't
boss or
panic.
whatever,
Yeah,
don't panic. Nobody panic. We can
yeah,
talk about these things without everybody being scared that we're gonna leave.
right,
Like, if you were to leave and let's say you were gonna go start a program somewhere else, or like, man, blank slate, you could do what you want. what
right.
would be like what would be your ideal structure? Let's just do 11 to 14-year-olds, because I think if we talked about in a whole program, a whole team, that could be a 3-hour conversation easily.
No doubt.
But like, let's go 11 to 14-year-olds. What would you do? What would be your goals for that group? Um, for that part of the program. I don't know. What would you do? Blank slate if you had to take over an 11 to 14-year-old program at a team, and the 11 to 14-year-old program only had like 50, let's say 50 to 100 kids in it. Ready? Go.
Okay. Yeah, I love blank slate. I've actually been fortunate to enjoy a blank slate a
Yeah.
couple of times. Yeah, I had a board of directors member when I was first interviewing in Panama City actually asked me, yeah, basically like trying to convince me to say yes to going to the program, which it worked. But he's like, hey, this is your sandbox. Like you can build whatever you want to build in this sandbox. And that was kind of resonated with me. I thought that was pretty cool. So this is a fun exercise.
Yeah.
11 to 14-year-olds are interesting, right? I've had the pleasure of getting to interview, several coaches over the years, being a head coach, and especially at some RVA, we're 6 years in, and we've gone from one full time coach to eight. And so I've been able to interview a lot of coaches for those exact positions, the 11, 12-year-olds or the 13, 14-year-olds, and a lot of times when I ask coaches, what are the favorite age group for you to coach? You would think that it would always be, the senior level, but it's not always senior level. There's really a lot of headaches that come with the
Yeah.
senior level, and so many of them are like, you know what, I really just love coaching the 11 12s, or I love coaching the 13 14s. And so I like the fact that you're asking that, because those are two very, very fun age groups to coach, and there are a lot of
And different.
similarities, and there
Yeah.
are way more differences than I think people realize.
Hmm.
So it's quite a broad range, because you can get someone who literally is a skinny tiny little 11-year-old, all the way up to a 14-year-old with a grown man's body, and they're somehow in the same group. So I'm going to, for the sake of this conversation, assume you're talking about essentially two different groups, an 11 and
Hmm.
12-ish group and a 13, 14-ish group.
Yeah.
The thing that I am focusing on, some of the consistencies that I'm focusing on now. I don't know if we're talking about culture or we're talking about technique or training strategies or something, but none of it
We're
works without the
let's
culture
talk
first.
about let's do it from the perspective of outcomes. Okay, so I think a great outcome would be performance. I think you have to talk about performance.
Yep.
We're a competitive sport, so performance matters. And if you're not a performance-based team, I think you have a hard time keeping really good athletes around always. So from a competitive standpoint, and then as a secondary thing or right alongside, um, I don't know if retention or engagement.
Hmm.
When I think about a
Yeah.
program, when I think about our program, I'm always thinking about, are we performing well? And I mean, maybe it's like the longer you coach, like, are you serving your community is a part of it too. I mean, really, like,
That's my language right there.
yeah, I mean, I truly believe we want to be a program that serves our community. And like, and I tell coaches and kids all the time, like, this might be your last year or two in the sport. Like, we don't know 100%.
Yeah.
And, me and you have talked about it. And like, we want to make this as good as possible for you right now. Okay, so let's take it from the goals of the program would be um performance
Yeah.
and let's do this. Performance and preparation and engagement. That's probably too much, but those are three heavy things I think at that age group. You want kids to stay in the sport at that age group because it's a big tipping point.
Yeah.
You want kids to perform because performance matters at every single level. And then preparation, you're trying to get 11 and 12s prepared for 13, 14. You're trying to get 13, 14s prepared for senior level swimming. So,
Yeah. So
boom.
they are is there's three different categories, but they're all interlinked. I'm
Hmm.
sure you know that already. When you're thinking about performance, performance is only as good as the ability to put together, consistent good work. Obviously, that matters less as you're younger. So when I'm thinking of performance at 11 and 12-year olds, I might have a stronger percentage of priority going towards engagement and what am I trying to get with this child in terms of their development as a person, because they're the formative years. You're 11 and 12. They're basically, the way I like to describe it is their worlds are very, very small.
Hmm.
When it really changes when you get a car or you have friends that drive. So you see that shift in their world, the size of their world around 15 or so. 11 and 12-year olds, their world's pretty small. They come to swim practice, they go to school, they've got a few friends, they got their family, and they are perfectly happy living in that world. So you want everything, your part of that world, to be as great as possible. And it doesn't have to all be about how hard can you train, how fast can you go. If you just make that world a place that they love to be, then you're
Hmm.
putting them in a situation where as they do get older and their world expands, they want swimming to be a larger part of that world, not because you made them, but because they want that. So
Hmm.
11, 12 is a really formative year, formative 2 years to really do that. From a training perspective, I'm a firm believer in racing in practice. I think so. I have coached, that age, and this is, one of the things I impress upon my coaches often. I don't make them do it because I let them, you know, create their own recipe. But I
Hmm.
strongly encourage racing at least once a week. And I actually, the most successful years I had with those age groups, I would actually record the racing and I would do similar, maybe about 4 or 5 different types of sets, and we would have rankings of those sets, and we would have all time rankings. And that really, really good because as much as you want to build up their fitness levels and you want them to have really, really good skills, if they don't know how to transfer those skills into a racing setting, then it's wasted time doing drills.
Yeah. Hey, when you say racing, can you give me an example of what you
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah, so like for example, I would do a set for a very, very long time. Just do like 650s all out, with like 100 easy or 150 easy in between each. Really,
hmm
really high quality. You do like three of one stroke, three of another, and what I would do is I would take their average. So it kind of takes out that one really, really good swim, and the next couple swims are not as good as the lactate starts to build up.
hmm
And so their goal is to improve their average. Is it nice to make their fastest one faster? Yes. But their goal is to improve the average. And you do it again, 6 to 8 weeks later. and we would keep the rankings. So, for example, if I did this for like 6, 8 years in a row, and I've got rankings, they would be 12 years old looking at the 16, 17-year-olds who are the kids that they are like, those are gods to those kids, the ones going to
Uh-huh.
juniors and stuff like that. And you're like, yeah, but you just beat her 50 breaststroke average, and she's going to junior nationals for the 100 breaststroke, and you just beat that. So that really puts things in perspective. It also is really good because it keeps the kids that don't really like to do a lot of yards and don't or kind of get bored with drills.
Hmm.
You put them in a racing set, and all of a sudden, that kid who's clogging up the back of the lane is an absolute star, and you've
Yeah.
got them totally engaged. I'm not saying race all the time. You got to do drills, you got to do yards, but I'm a firm believer in racing a lot when they're 11, 12. When they shift to 13, 14, um, number one, you got to remember that 13-year-olds are probably closer to 11, 12-year-olds than they
Hmm.
are to 14, 15-year-olds. That's a little side note. I think USA Swimming has the age groups completely wrong. We could talk about that for a long time. I think the age groups should be 10, 11, 9 and under 10, 11 should be 11, 13, 14, or 12, 13,
Yeah.
14, 15. But that's a side note. That's just, I think we tend to throw 13-year-olds into that upper age group a lot. And more often than not, your 13-year-olds are probably closer to 12-year-olds, especially since a lot of them are in like late seventh grade, early eighth grade, versus 14-year-olds can be in high school. So there's a pretty
Yes.
big social divide there. But
Yeah.
anyway, for the sake of the conversation, we'll call it 13, 14s.
Hey, shout out to those young high schoolers though, because sometimes they really
It's
help out
hard.
my 13, 14 relays.
Yes, they do. They absolutely do. But anyway, so 13, 14s. Um, this is you talking about blank slate, like in a
Yeah.
perfect world, this is
Yeah.
what I would really like to do. I think we so many of us, and I'm a little older than you are, but I don't know what you grew up on, but it was yards, 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 right, growing up.
Mhm.
And so there was the mindset that you can't overdo yards at 13, 14, because what do you do if you're doing, 65, 7,000 with them? Well, now you got to be doing like 8,000 and 85, and that was the way we did it.
Hmm.
But I've actually done research on this. I've done a lot of physiology research over the years. I studied it. I've studied it on my own. And there's a lot of research out there that will tell you that 13, 14 is actually the age that you really do want to be doing more of that yardage, because their body can adapt to it and handle it a lot better.
Hmm.
And it has everything to do with, like the red muscle cells versus the white muscle cells, and the ability to do more anaerobic capacity stuff. So in a perfect world, I would actually up the yardage quite a bit from 11, 12. And, you start to introduce the yardage a little bit, but it's more racing. And then you keep the racing element at 13, 14, up the yardage a lot more, build that aerobic foundation. And then you can actually drop down from that a little bit at a senior level, which is a little bit more, 2024
Hmm.
mindset. I've never been able to put that into full practice because I only really kind of learned that about 10 years ago. And I've been, ahead of the program, not really getting to have full development over all of those levels
Yeah.
since then. But that's really how I do it. I'd like to see what that looks like. Obviously not a yardage only mindset, because I'm a very firm believer in every week you should do a little bit of everything. You should race, you
Hmm.
should recover, you should do lactate tolerance, you should do aerobic, but just the average yardage can be higher for that 13, 14 group. And then you don't have to go up from there. You go down from there. You just teach them how to improve their quality.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Um, and the I totally agree with that 13, 14 age group. It's such a divide because you'll have a group of kids that are like they're really ready to train. Like they're physically ready to train. They can do more, they can handle more. And then you have a group that's still on that on-ramp, like getting there, coming off of being 12, but they're still on that like they're building up to get to that place.
Yeah.
So anyways, just wanted your thought. I've been thinking a lot lately of like, what would you do? What would somebody do blank slate? So that's kind of been my questions to coaches. I'm gonna start trying to call coaches, by the way. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try to call a coach a day. You're my call for today. So easy.
Yeah. Check that box. Yeah.
But
I wish I had the time to talk to a coach a day. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of really just access to a lot of phenomenal coaching minds. So whenever I do have a thought like what you're talking about, I call my 6 or 8, coaches, or I'll shoot them a text message and be like, "What do you think about such and such?" And then, I get some feedback from some pretty spectacular coaching minds. But sometimes you got to call. Sometimes you just got to talk it out, more
Yeah.
so than the text message. And I agree. I think we don't do it enough. One, because some coaches don't want to sound dumb, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
want to be like, oh, I don't want them to think less of me because I'm asking this. Well, what if it's a stupid question? Whatever. Every coach is dumb to a degree. We don't really know. You don't know until you actually try something new and talk it out, like you said. But you
Yeah,
got
and
to
I
be willing
think
to share.
yeah, and I think like this is with everything. People are really good at poking holes in things or saying why something won't work, right? And there's such few voices like trying or just talking something out even or even trying to figure something out. This is something that drives me crazy with are you part of the Facebook group, the Swim Coaches ID Exchange group?
I've been on it for a very long time, and
Yeah.
I've muted it.
Yeah, man,
Full
and there's
disclosure, I love it because the idea is really good, but then people they're just mean. I don't like
yeah,
that.
there's a lot of good coaches on there that are like very active. Like I know some of the coaches that they're on it all the time and they're giving quality feedback. But like I just feel bad sometimes when a coach is like, "Hey, so I did this with my team and I thought this was really good." And somebody's like, "Why are you training like that?" Like
Yeah.
judging their training. And it's like, dude, you have no context of where they're at, what they're doing. So that
And
group drives
instead
me
of
a bit
asking
crazy.
or trying to gain some information and knowledge about it, you just rip them.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer like I think very few of us are in the perfect scenario where we're only working with elite level athletes. Everybody's trying to push towards that top 1%. And a lot more of us are in I would say like still coaching good athletes and stuff like that, but so many athletes are in the realm of like everything makes you better and it's trying to like just optimize that and make that as good as possible. And at a certain point, everything works. Like everything works a little, right? And when you're working with certain athletes, I think you do have to know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it every step of the way. When an athlete gets like what I'm saying is a highly trained athlete. And this is
Hmm.
the same in other sports. Like you'll hear I don't know if you ever heard anything from Andy Galpin. He's like kind of famous now, I guess, but like sports physiologist, a strength and conditioning muscle guy.
Oh, nice.
Um, and anytime he answers questions, he's like, "Well, are we talking about a highly trained or a moderately trained athlete?" He's like, "If
Right.
it's a moderately trained athlete, oh, this stuff will work for the next 3 years for them. Like they'll still see gains doing this X, Y, and Z program." He's like, "A highly trained athlete, you won't see this, like you know what I mean?" But there's
Yeah.
definitely a divide between moderately trained, like no low trained, and highly trained athlete. And I think sometimes we talk like everybody's in the highly trained category, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you need to work on enough aerobic capacity. And it's like, dude, they're 16 and they started swimming last year. Like there's
Well, I
that
think
plus 20 other things they need to do.
well, and all, before they even think about getting to that one thing, I think the lesson learned is whether you're well, I'll tell you that a lot of it is, when coaches want to learn, where do they go to learn? Right now, nowadays, hey, God willing, hopefully we have coaches here who are wanting to learn something, right? And we're
Hmm.
having a good conversation, and maybe somebody is learning something, and I'm thrilled that we get to do that. They go to, your Instagram page, they go to somebody's, podcast, or they look up videos or something like that, or they go to an ASCA or an ISCA, coaches clinic or something like that. Well, what do
Hmm.
those cater to? Well, they cater to all the best athletes because, well, they coach the best athletes, so those coaches must know the most. So that's who we should be learning from.
Hmm.
But the problem with that is that's there to get clicks, to get likes, to get views, to sell tickets, right? But most
Yeah.
coaches don't coach those athletes. Maybe
Yes.
God willing, we'll get to coach those, from time to time,
Hmm.
but a large percentage of the kids out there are not those stars who are, making all those little incremental improvements with the little teeny details that matter so much. We just
Hmm.
need the kid to like get their head down before their arms in butterfly. Can I just start with that? You know what I mean? Like stop swimming with your head up or stop swimming 50 freestyle, taking, 13 breaths in a 50. Can I just
Hmm.
start with that? There's not enough conversation about that because it doesn't get a lot of clicks,
I
doesn't get a
agree.
lot of likes. Or
Yeah.
you put it in a coaches exchange and people eat you alive for it. And they're like, why are you asking that?
Yeah. It's like, why are you asking that? It's like, we did 425s, no breath. And it's like, did you know that that's bad? You should never do that.
You
It's
should
like,
never do
okay,
no breath. Okay, well,
never do no breath.
yeah,
Never
this
not be
guy,
afraid.
the kid's a 20.7 in the 50. He can do a 25 no breath. It's okay.
Yeah.
But anything you get, any way you consume information, on the internet or any way that we have access to it, it's just a snapshot, right?
Hmm.
It's if you it's like when coaches share workouts, great, here's a workout. That's a cool workout. What's the context? Where are you in the season? What level athlete is it? What
Yeah.
type of intensity are you looking for? Unless you're like really laying out every single bit of information that is necessary for them to understand why that was a good practice for your particular group on that particular training day, you're really
Yeah.
just throwing out yards in a workout.
Yeah.
And what does that help people? Same with technique. You watch, a video of Nathan Adrian doing this perfect, curved arm, high elbow, good anchoring catch freestyle, and what does that do for the 11-year-old who does a crossover kick where their feet hit each other in freestyle still?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a huge advocate of like make it your own. So like when I read other coaches' workouts, I'm only reading it from the lens of how could I use this for what I'm trying to accomplish? How could I
Right.
use this? Because it's too like you said, no coach is going to sit there and explain their exact situation, the day, how they were feeling. You know what I mean? There's and they're also when you're watching a workout, you don't when you're reading another coach's workout, you don't know what changes they made on the fly on an
Yeah.
individual level as
Yeah.
well. And there's so much of that. I think like on a tangent here, something my first Ask a Clinic, I heard David Marsh speak, and at the time he was coaching Team Elite at SwimMac,
Hmm.
and he put a workout on the board and he said, "Okay, here's a workout." He's like, I see you. Everybody wants to write this down and blah 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 blah. And he was kind of like he was like pointing out that all you care about is like what workout I'm doing. He's like, let me show you what we really did. And he went through different sections of the workout and told you, and he said different things he did with different athletes on his team during those workouts.
Yeah.
He's like, and on this one, Ryan, at the time he was coaching Ryan Lochte, he's like, Ryan's really struggling with this. So I had him do extra at whatever, right? And like that was huge for me because I was like, oh, it's not necessarily, yes, the workout matters, the workout that you write, but it's what that individual athlete is getting out of it that matters the most. And not every workout's going to be the same for every athlete. Because if it
Yeah.
was, all of our athletes would turn out to be just as fast as the fastest kid on our team. Or you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
just as bad as the worst person on our team. Like, and it's not like that, right?
Well, and so let's transfer it back to like the club coach who might be watching this and thinking, well, that's great that he was able to do that for those six people that he
Mm.
coached, and this
Yeah.
Ryan, you do this, and Kathleen, you do that. And but I've got, he's like, I got 23 kids that I'm
Yeah.
watching, and how do I individualize it for 23 kids? The way you do that is you got to create a culture that where everybody understands you care about them personally, individually, and you're doing it for the team at the same time. And if you need to give someone, a different way to do the set, then
Hmm.
one, as a coach, you got to make sure at some point you got to give that level of attention to everybody. It doesn't have to be every single day, every single practice. And
Hmm.
you got to watch out for making sure that you don't do it to the same two or three kids, because then everybody else can be like, well, he's always changing it for those two. He doesn't even care about us. So be
Or that
cognizant of
kid,
that.
or that kid like expects a change
They
every
always
time too.
expect to
It's
change.
like,
Yeah.
how do you want me to do this? And it's like, dude, I just want you to do
I
it how I
want you to do
wrote
it with
it.
the rest of the group. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So mixing it through, but the point is you can do that and you should do that. And the kids
Hmm.
will appreciate that. Like how many times my son's 12, he's gonna be, 15 soon, just because I come home he comes home from school, like, how was school? It's good. Well, what was
Yeah.
good about it? It's just a normal day. He's 12, he's already doing that. I can't imagine how much worse it's going to be over the next few years. Well,
God, my
the kids
daughter's
are doing the
6 and
same
she does
thing.
that.
Pardon me?
My daughter's 6 and she does that.
She's already doing that. Yeah,
Drives me
it was
crazy.
good. My 7-year-old answers good no matter what I ask him. Hey, bud, I love you. Good.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a side note. But my point is that the kids that we're coaching, they go home to their parents at some point, right?
Mhm.
Unless you're coaching college kids, but even then, you'd be shocked at how involved the college parents are with their kids day to day in practice. Um, but you want that conversation to be, "Hey, how was practice today? Oh, it was awesome. Coach Mike told me, everybody else had to do, 6 underwaters, but he actually had me do 8. And at first I wasn't happy about it, but I was like, no, he believes in me. And that's why I'm
Mhm.
doing 8. Or, everybody else had to do the fly practice, but he had me doing breast on every other. And I feel like I made so much progress with my breaststroke. My breaststroke feels so good now.
Yes.
That's what you want the conversation to be, not how was practice? Good. It was fine.
Yeah,
How do
and
you make
man,
that?
I get so many questions from coaches that are like, "Well, how do I make it work?" I have 25 kids in 4 lanes, which is not a terrible ratio depending on the size of the kid.
Yeah,
There's way worse situations,
no doubt.
but it's exactly that. It's like make it work for a few of your athletes, not every day, not every time, but just find a way to make it work. Lately, I have this saying, I call it the bee crushers. I have a group of kids who like they're kind of in the gray. So we've talked about this. I coach like kind of a wide range of abilities, like non-B
Yeah.
to like borderline sectional 13, 14-year-olds. And I can't really write a workout that fits everybody all the time.
Right.
And I have some people that are in between interval groups. Like, if they go on the A, it's kind of touch and go that day. But if they go on the B, they crush. And man, I think very few kids love the like that feeling of working hard and barely making it through an hour and a
Mhm.
half practice. There are some kids who love that because they know
Yeah.
how hard they worked and they hung. They hung with the big dogs on the team. There are
Yeah.
some kids that have that mentality, but most kids would much rather go on the B, have like way more cushion on their interval and crush, like lead, like win the set by half a body
Right.
length. And I have a group of kids where they're just way better off staying on the B. They could hang on the A probably, but them crushing the B is that's how I'm gonna get the most out of them. And it's working. So
Yeah.
lately, like the B crushers, I've been big on my B
Bee
crushers.
crushers. I love Well, say, just the fact that you got a name for it already, now they've got identity, and
Yeah,
they have, like, almost some ownership over it, like, "No, come on, come here in the bee crusher, and let's go do this." And you gotta
yeah.
live up to it, right? You can't be a bee crusher and not crush it. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta crush it. So what I would do in that scenario is, you got kids who are crushing it, and they're in the B interval, but you want them to be progressing. Maybe progressing doesn't necessarily mean going on the A interval. Progressing might just be making the B interval by more.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
your version of crushing it might be, if we're doing, 200s on 225 on the A interval and we're doing 235 on the B interval. Well, I think you're good. I think you could make the 225, but like you said, you're not that kid. These kids can be crushed. Well, come over here on 235, but I want you to hold all of them under 225, or I want you to hold them under 223 and show
Mm-hmm.
yourself that you can go fast enough to make the interval, but you're going to crush the B in the process. And then when you feel like your time is ready and you feel like you're ready to do that, you come talk to me and I'm going to be like, heck yeah, let's go do that A. That way it's
Yeah.
their idea to go on the A and you're not forcing them. And they still see that as a goal, but they see the path towards getting there versus I'm just always going to be the B kid.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times those B crushers, when they have that little more breathing room on the interval, and it's not always interval, sometimes it's stroke, sometimes they're doing frim instead of IM, and it's the
Right.
same interval, right? Like, or they're doing backstroke instead of IM, whatever. Like there's a million ways to do it. But a lot of times it on that softer interval, they go just as fast as being like right in the middle of the A. So like I'll have a girl who really struggles to make hundreds on 120. Like she'll end up just missing them after two or three.
Right.
And then I put her on 130 and she's going like 112s, 113. Now she probably should be able to make the A. I know, probably thinking that like she probably should be able to make it.
Yeah.
But man, some kids just don't love that like less than 5 seconds rest feeling like they just want to breathe for a second and then they can go. And for that kid, I would rather have them do 8 100s going 111 than 10 100s going 119, right? Like at
Right.
the end, like what is their body adapting to? They're adapting to that 111 effort, intensity, speed. Maybe not the same fatigue. Maybe they're not adapting to the same fatigue, but man, as far as that effort and intensity and what that fast feels like, not just like sludging through the set, I think that's really important.
Well, and that same kid doing 119, to try and just touch and go on 120s, the likelihood of them having the mental break in and out of their walls is very high, right?
Hmm.
So now their details they're gonna crash versus if
Yes,
they're on
100%.
111, then the expectation of saying, no, you're still gonna hit your approach. You're still gonna do your two dolphins. You're still gonna flutter through your breakout. You're gonna get a hand hit before you breathe, whatever, you're pressing with them. And they're like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And I can hit 111. I just need the extra five. Heck yeah, I'd much rather you do that. Now, if you can
Yeah.
show yourself you can do that and then you can do that on 120, obviously you're going to be at another level. So
Hmm.
still having that goal of moving up to that interval can still be a thing, but you're saying I don't want you to move up to that next level at the sacrifice of swimming well.
Yeah. And this is a great point. I'm gonna put a bow on this because I'm about out of
Yep.
time here.
Yeah, I love it.
Uh that idea, like quality with the quantity, is a real struggle at 13, 14 because I feel when I was an 11, 12 coach, I didn't feel this, but as a 13, 14 coach, I feel that like we have to train. Like we really have to train. And yardage means a lot of different things to different people depending on when you use that word. But we do have to hit a certain amount of volume that I feel
Yeah.
comfortable with, not only so they can perform, but like feel prepared for that next step. Um, and I feel like we start giving up the details in search of the training, where at 11, 12, we'll give up the training to master the details. And this just might be me, like my own struggle, like I need to get better at this. Um, but like my kids' details, they're not as good as I would like them to be, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and it drives me insane
Well, I'll
for the
tell you
for,
something. You know how you're always learning, right?
yeah.
Um, One thing that I've learned, and I haven't even told him this, but I don't even know if he'll ever watch this video, but our senior coach, I've told you about him. His name's Blake Profit. He's doing a great job. And one of the things that I feel like he does really, really well is he gives the kids the space in a workout almost every single day, and sometimes a lot longer than I would think, where the expectations aren't to go fast. Yeah, we might be getting in a 300 free and then like 450s kick drill or something like that. And we do that like 5 times or something. And in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, we're going to descend these 300s one to three and three, four, and five. We're going to be like as fast as we can go. Let's go. We're going to get
Yeah.
yards. We're going to push. He's like, no, no, I want them to just feel good and I want them to get better. And he just uses the terminology, get better. And so
Mm,
the expectation is not you have to be faster at all costs. It's you need to get better. That can mean dropping your time 1 to 5. It can mean doing another underwater off the walls or focusing on your details, but just giving them just the opportunity to just swim and figure out what feels good and play
hmm.
around and try it without the worry of whether the interval's too fast or I have to hit this time. That goes a really long way. And he's
Yeah.
seen tremendous results with 13, 14s and now our senior level doing that. And then one thing, because I know you got to go soon, but I'll add on to that is remember, this is taking it back to the conversation earlier, but remember, 13, 14s are still glorified 11, 12-year-olds. And as
Yeah.
much as we need to train them like they're 15 or 16-year-olds, and they a lot of times seem grown up and they have that attitude and mindset, they're still just
Yeah.
young kids. And
Yeah.
a lot of time you can't just pivot away from the fun, doing team cheers all the time, playing games and doing gimmicky holiday practices. You can't pivot away from that entirely at 13, 14, expect to train them at a senior level only. really honestly, you need to never really let go of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I
No,
encourage 13, 14 coaches keep the fun in it as long as you can.
yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think I've definitely, I mean, just personally, I actually think I'm more fun this year. Boom.
Hey,
Said it.
no, your
Maybe.
kids gonna agree?
Maybe they better, dude. Jeez. For the
If they
first
don't
eight
agree, they're not
weeks,
gonna get the fun anymore.
my problem is like it's never enough fun. Like it doesn't matter if I'm doing more fun than last year. It's like because like this season, the first 8 weeks we have a field by our pool and we went out to the field once a week, which is pretty good because the previous year we
Yeah,
went out like once a month.
right.
And there's a big increase. And I said, Thursdays we're going to the field. We're gonna spend 30 minutes out there. It'll be good, it'll be fun. And like they act like I never do it. And I'm like, we've done triple the fun in quotations. Um, but yeah, don't lose the fun. Okay,
Don't
good
lose
talk.
it.
I got jet. Thanks for making time, man. That was our
Dude,
longest one yet.
such a pleasure. I look forward to doing the next one. Hopefully, it won't be like 30 something degrees outside because my hands are frozen right now. But it was worth it. I love getting to chat with you.
Cool. So hey, thanks for listening to this conversation. If you want more resources to help you become a better coach, you can head over to my website, betterswimcoach.com. I got a couple products there that'll be really good for you, but I also got a lot of free resources, workouts, different things on training, and I just developed a swim coaching community for you to join. If you go over to the link in my bio on Instagram, you can get access to that. It's 100% free. I even put five like free courses there. Some are just like a workout pack, but one of them is like how to do the crossover turn. So I got a lot of good free resources there and access to a really positive community. Not like the one we were talking about where you're gonna get judged for your questions. So anyways, thanks for listening. Go check out the free stuff. And if you want to level up your coaching, we got some more premium stuff there too. And you guys have a good one. Let's go be better coaches.